Information technology has been around for a long time. People communicate with each other through technology available at their point. So basically, as long as people exist, information technology also exists. The history of information technology divides into four main ages: the pre-mechanical, mechanical, electromechanical, and electronic age. At this timeline, we can see how information technology progressed, how ages shift from each other, and how long their gaps is. Pre-mechanical age is from 3000 BC up until 1450. From 1450 up until 1840 is mechanical age. Electromechanical age is started from 1840 up until 1940. 1940 is the start of electronic age up until the present. So we can see that information technology is really important for us to communicate with each other.
The first age of information is the pre-mechanical age, which started from 3000 BC to 1450 AD. People in this age were using writings and alphabets as means of communication. The most common carvings used by ancient people were the petroglyphs. These are rock carvings which involves powerful cultural symbols that reflect the complex societies and religions of the surrounding tribes. As alphabets became more popular and more people were writing information down, pens and paper began to be developed. It started as just marks in wet clay, but letter paper was created out of papyrus plant. Now that people were creating a lot of information down, they needed ways to keep it all in permanent storage. This is where the first books and libraries are developed. Egyptian scrolls were very popular because of the ways of Egyptians in writing down information to save. Also, during this period were the first numbering systems. Around 100 AD was when the first 1 to 9 system was created by the people from India. And yes, now that numbers were created, people wanted stuff to do with them, so they created calculators. A calculator was a very first sign of an information processor. The popular model of that time was the abacus.
So the second age is the mechanical age from 1450 to 1840. So first is the first information explosion. So Johann Gutenberg, a German from Mainz, Germany, so he invented a technology, something like a flat wooden plate technology that creates a sharp images on paper that produce books and text quickly that later on you will see from the next slide. It is something like an invention that sped up the process of composing pages from weeks to just a few minutes. So this printing press made written information much more accessible to the general public by reducing the time and the cost that it took to reproduce the written material. So next one, he developed the books indexes and widespread use for page numbers. So this development of book indexes and the widespread use of page numbers also made information retrieval a much easier task. So these new techniques of organizing information would become valuable later in the development of files and database. So second from the mechanical age is the first general purpose computers were actually people who held the job title computers. So computers, they're the one who works with numbers before. So in short, the computer before was a person. So third one under the mechanical age is the slide rules, the Pascaline, and the Leibniz machine. So first one is the slide rules, which is invented by William Oughtred, an English clergyman. So this is a device that allowed the user to multiply and divide by sliding two pieces of precisely machines and scribed wood against each other. That again, you will later on see from the next slide. So the slide rule is an early example of an analog computer. So it is an instrument that measures instead of countings. Next one is the Pascaline or the Pascaline. So it is invented by Blaise Pascal, that later on he called Pascaline or Pascaline. So it is used a series of wheels and cogs, so that you will later on see again from the next slides, to add and subtract numbers. And the last one is the Leibniz machine. So this machine was able to improve on Pascal's machine in 1670s by adding additional components that made multiplication and division easier. So from Pascaline or Pascaline, from add and subtract, so this machine allows them to multiply and divide easier.
Babbage's engines. Charles Babbage, 1792 to 1871, eccentric English mathematician. Difference engine are automatic mechanical calculators designed to tabulate polynomial functions. The analytical engine, successor to difference engine, which was a design for a simpler mechanical computer. Difference engines and analytical engines were developed by Charles Babbage, a machine pioneer. The term difference engine comes from the Latin term divide difference. A difference engine is a type of automated mechanical calculator that is used to measure or tabulate polynomial functions. It can calculate polynomial functions in a way that tabulates them using small sets of coefficients. Analytical engine is a completely programmable general-purpose computer with an integrated automatic mechanical digital computer. With the support of punch cards, any calculation set can be programmed. It also has an ALU, or arithmetic logic unit, as well as integrated memory and program flow control. It is the first general mechanical computer device that can perform all other finite calculations. Difference engine can do one mathematical operation, and analytical engine can do 4 basic mathematical operations. Difference engine aim is to tabulate the results of a specific function, and analytical engine is not designed to tabulate the results of a specific function.
The machine was developed in France, invented by Joseph Marie Jacquard. It was introduced during 1801. It was considered as an important step in the history of computing. Punch cards are used to store patterns and to reduce strenuous manual labor. It simplifies the process of manufacturing textiles. The loom was controlled by a change of cards, wherein there are punch cards placed together into continuous sequence. Augusta Ada King. She lived in England in the 19th century. She was known for creating the first computer program, a century before the first computer was built.
The Electromechanical Age, 1840 to 1940. The discovery of ways to harness electricity was the key advance made during this period. Knowledge and information could now be converted into electrical impulses. The beginnings of telecommunication. First is voltaic battery. The voltaic pile was the first electrical battery that could continuously provide an electric current to a circuit. It was invented by Italian physicist Alessandro Volta, who published his experiments in 1799. The voltaic pile, invented by Alessandro Volta in 1800, was the first device to provide a steady supply of electricity. Next is telegraph. Telegraph is the long-distance transmission of textual messages where the sender uses a system known to the recipient rather than a physical exchange of an object bearing the message. The earliest true telegraph put into widespread use was the optical telegraph of cloth chop, invented in the late 18th century. The electric telegraph started to replace the optical telegraph in the mid-19th century. The next one is Morse code. To transmit messages across telegraph wires in the 1830s, Morse and Vail created what came to be known as Morse code. The code assigned letters in the alphabet and numbers a set of dots or short marks and dashes or long marks based on the frequency of use. Letters used often, such as E, get a simple code, while those used infrequently, such as Q, get a longer and more complex code. Initially, the code, when transmitted over the telegraph system, was rendered as marks on a piece of paper that the telegraph operator would then translate back into English. Next is the telephone and radio. In 1871, Bell started working on the harmonic telegraph, a device that allowed multiple messages to be transmitted over a wire at the same time. While trying to perfect this technology, which was backed by a group of investors, Bell became preoccupied with finding a way to transmit human voice over wires. Bell was granted his telephone patent. A few days later, he made the first ever telephone call to Watson. The first edition of radio was patented in 1896 by Guglielmo Marconi. Marconi was a pioneer of wireless telegraphy. Born in Italy in 1874, he began experimenting with his inventions at the age of 20 after becoming aware of the work of Hertz in electromagnetic waves, also known as radio waves. Marconi identified this area was not popularly pursued by other inventors at the same time. In July 1986, Marconi made the first demonstration of his invention, the radio transmitter and receiver, for the British government. In December 1901, Marconi successfully transmitted the first wireless telegraphy signals across the Atlantic Ocean. He was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1909.
Electromechanical computing. The first person who helped the development of electromechanical computing was Herman Hollerith. Hollerith was the father of information processing and founded the tabulating machine company, which later became the computer tabulating recording company. The tabulating machine, or the census machine, was an electromechanical machine that designed to assist in summarizing information that is stored on punch card. A punch card is a piece of stiff of paper that holds digital data represented by the presence or absence of holes in the predefined position. Punch card was adapted for use in early computers and provided computer programmers with a new way to put information into their machine. Hollerith won the contest with his punch card device, and his invention helped to complete the 1890 census. Next is the Mark I. Howard Aiken, a PhD student at Harvard University, invented the Mark I, or the automatic sequence controlled calculator. The Mark I was the first operating machine that could execute long computations automatically. It was enormous sized, measuring 8 feet high, 51 feet long, and 3 feet deep. It weighed 5 tons, used of 530 miles of wire, and 730,000 separate parts. Paper tape is a slow, low-capacity sequential medium data for storage that was used on Mark I.
The Electronic Age. First rise early 1940s, electronic vacuum tube. Eckert and Mauchly, electronic numerical integrator and computer. the first high-speed digital computer capable of being reprogrammed to solve a full range of computing problems. Electronic Delay Storage Automatic Calculator or EDSAC in 1949, the first stored program computer. The first general-purpose computer for commercial use, Universal Automatic Computer, became the world's first commercial computer. Some may say the electronic age really did not take place until the invention of transistor. That happened in 1947, but all the operating electronic devices were working with vacuum tube at that time. It really did not take over until the late 1950s and 1960s.
Four generations of digital computing. The first generation was on 1951 to 1958. Vacuum tubes as their main logic elements. Punch cards to input and externally store data. Rotating magnetic drums for internal storage of data and programs. Programs written in machine language. Requires a compiler. Vacuum tubes is an electronic device that controls the flow of electrons in a vacuum. The basic working principle of a vacuum tube is a phenomenon called thermionic emission. The second generation was on 1959 to 1963. This time, they replaced the vacuum tubes with transistors. Punch cards were also replaced by magnetic tape. Rotating magnetic drums were also replaced by magnetic cores for internal storage. High-level programming languages were created. This time, they used transistors because transistors are much more durable than vacuum tubes, much smaller and much less voltage than tubes in order to function.
We also have here the third generation of digital computing, which happened from 1964 up to 1979, though there are also references that says it happened from 1964 to 1971. In this generation, the transistors are being replaced with integrated circuits in computers, and using these integrated circuits in computers help them reduce the size of computers even more than the second generation computers. And it also helped them to function faster than before. The magnetic tape was used all throughout the computers as well as the magnetic core that was used in wound or stacked magnetic cores turned into metal oxide semiconductors, which represents a class of unique materials due to their electronic charge transport properties. The operating systems also happened in this generation, which is the advanced programming languages like BASIC by John G. Kemeny and Thomas E. Kurtz developed. It has also Bill Gates and Microsoft got their start in 1975, although the MS Windows debuts in 1983. Now let's go in the fourth generation, which happened in 1979 up to the present year. They developed a microprocessor, or also known as the CPU or the Central Processing Units, which contained memory, logic, and control circuits all on a single chip. Some of the earliest computers to use a microprocessor include the Altair 8800, the IBM 5100, and Micrel as well. Today's computers still use a microprocessor that made this generation still be considered. In this generation, the MS Windows debuts in November 20, 1983, and it was not a complete operating system back then, but rather a operating environment that extended MS-DOS. They also released the version 3 in May 22, 1990, which is called the Windows 3. And this Windows 3 user interface was finally a serious competitor to the user interface of the Macintosh computer, or also known as the Apple Mac. The personal computers had improved graphics by this time due to the VGA video cards, which is utilized in order to process and generate an output image feed to a computer monitor or display. And now for our last bullet is the first Apple Mac released in 1984 by Steve Jobs, and it was the first commercially successful personal computer, but still has unpopular features back then, such as the mouse and the graphical user interface that arrived in early 1980. Again, that arrived in early 1980. All in all, the history of information technology is really rich, and we know that it will continue to be part of our lives and grow even more.